Hey Jesse, this is just a look at your roll video. A couple things to think about. Initially, just looking at your setup position. This is essentially the closest to your setup that you had after flipping over away from your paddle. Just doesn't hurt you to practice, especially in flat water, having a parallel setup position. I know you expressed wanting the class 5 roll, that you might only have one chance, that maybe you're feeling rushed in that moment. And in my experience of class 4 and up, 9 times out of 10, we actually want to trim our profile by having our paddle as close to our boat as possible while we're waiting. So this really ends up acting a lot more like a high brace than a true roll. So in summary, practice with your paddle parallel to your boat in your setup position. Practice waiting in that position before initiating your roll. Practice being composed in that moment. That being said, you're doing a phenomenal job of getting your paddle clear of the water. So in this case, your backhand, your arm is out of the water up to the elbow. Your wrist is well out of the water here. Additionally, your blade is pretty much flat to the water. If anything, it has a slight descending angle, meaning that the direction that the leading edge is about to move, the blade is angled so that it will go down slightly for the sweep roll, or a sweep to sea, as you said you do. You want a neutral or slightly descending blade angle. When we have an ascending blade angle, that is with this leading edge angled slightly upward compared to the trailing edge, we experience a kind of blade resistance that really changes the dynamics of the roll and makes it less effective. Let's watch this roll in slow-mo for a sec. This is 1/8 speed. Great, some things to think about starting at the end. This is what I would call a Nate Nahikian style finish position. Both hands over the water, whole paddle out over the water, torso rotated. So it's a really excellent torso rotation. Your belly button is shooting off towards the side that you came up on. Your paddle is almost parallel to your boat there. Like we were talking about yesterday, my theory is that this hand here doesn't need to cross the center line, and if anything, that is throwing 4 to 6 pounds of meat across the center line, throwing your balance off. If you think about coming up in a class 5 environment in this position, it actually has you off balance towards this side, not prepared for any particular stroke. So you could think about bringing this hand and wrist up to that shoulder. That keeps all of that meat on the far side of the center line, even when you're twisted around like this, and ultimately prepares you, I think, a little better for a stroke on the side you came up on, or a quicker switch. Toggling backwards in the roll, one of the things I'm noticing is just how deep your paddle blade is here. One of the reasons I like to teach the bent arm in the setup is that by bending this arm, that allows a slight, almost straight arm here to keep this blade higher. So it's not wrong that that blade is that far under the surface. Your roll is really effective. And in an ideal sweep roll or sweep to sea roll, that blade stays closer to the surface. Especially here, I think your arm is your back arm is almost completely straight and punching towards the center line of your body. I think ideally with that arm bent, more like, learning new software, I didn't love that angle function. With that arm a little more bent, this paddle blade here might be further that way, and this blade that's way deep would be more at the surface here. I think that this deep part of your paddle action starts here. I think one of the things that will help you is a setup closer to your boat. I think that there's a way in which starting way out here may be setting you up to pull a little bit on the paddle more than you need to. A true sweep roll, whether it's sweep or sweep to sea, there's really no blade resistance. One of the things you can watch for if you shoot video of yourself or see video of yourself is ideally there's not a huge kerplunk splash, and you have a pretty big one there. Look at that crest of water coming up there. That indicates that you've created a huge cavity as your blade plows down into the water. Ideally, our blade is slicing just under the surface of the water with no resistance, and so like minimal cavitation, minimal creation of a vacuum that then where the water collapses back on itself, creating that rooster tail. Jesse, all in all, a really solid roll. I bet it works for you really well. These are just some real polishing points to think about, and as you're practicing on flat water, being able to dial some of these in before then practicing a roll more in this way in moving water venues like Loch 6, I think will really benefit your consistency and that feeling of having a Class 5 roll. Really nice working with you. Make sure and check out my video on how to do the sweep roll. I think you'll find my paddle blade angle is a little bit ascending, giving me a little bit of a kerplunk as well, but I don't think it goes as deep as yours does.